The voice of sharing. 旅人ASEAN.
Hi everyone, it's me Gowri today, and I'm here with Arlene.
Hey, good morning.
Okay, so we're here on a Monday, and it's about 8:11 today.
Yeah, it's a lazy Monday, but we have to do a show on the news now.
Yeah, the show goes on. So let's start with the first news for today, which is reported by The Independent. Missing Malaysian Airlines flight MH370. 11 terrorists with links to Al-Qaeda arrested on suspicion of involvement in jet's disappearance.
Wow.
The mystery surrounding the fate of missing airlines deepened after officials arrested a group of 11 terrorists with links to Al-Qaeda on suspicion of involvement in the jet's disappearance.
It has become some sort of like a terrorist, a Hollywood movie.
Yeah,
it started off just like a missing plane, you know.
Right.
Now it's terrorism. I don't know how far it would go.
It's crazy. It's getting deeper and deeper and twisted.
Yeah, and you know the suspect, they say that they are aged between 22 and 55. They were arrested in Malaysia capital Kuala Lumpur and the state of Kedah last week, reported by the Daily Mail.
Right, and it seems that some of them are students, some of them are odd job workers, there's a young widow, and there are also business professionals. So they are from all the different groups of ages. And it seems that the possibility that the plane was diverted by militants is still high on the list, and international investigators have asked for a comprehensive report on this new terror group.
Interesting. So, there's no sign of the MH370, no debris. No, we don't even have like a confirmed data on whether which sea it is situated. But now there's a new theory saying that it is actually linked to Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, exactly. So far, no debris has been found, like what you said. And we don't know the exact location where the plane crashed. And actually, we don't even know if it actually crashed.
Yeah,
it was just an assumption that this was the last location of the plane and this is where it must have went down.
I would say this is definitely a Hollywood movie material.
So the next news is actually a follow-up to the first news, where Malaysia Police Chief denies terror arrest linked to missing MH370.
Interesting. So the Malaysian police are denying it, but it is reported by the Independents that it could be an Al-Qaeda attack.
Yeah, Malaysia Inspector General of Police Khalid Bakar said that there is absolutely no connection between the arrest and the MH370.
But why they were being arrested if it's no connection?
Yeah, he didn't say, but he denied all the reports that the students were activists, and he denied all links to Al-Qaeda.
And they were rounded up by, these people were rounded up at the Bukit Aman Special Branch Anti-Terrorism Unit, since they believe to have terror rings with the Syria and southern Philippines. But what it has to do with MH370 anyway? So, I don't know.
Well, I guess this whole thing had U.S. involved, and then there's China and Kuala Lumpur, and there's definitely something fishy going on. But until now, it's been almost 2 months since the plane went missing, and we still don't know for sure what happened, and everyone is left hanging.
That's true.
And now there's this new news about the Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, and to me, just find the plane. That's it. Just go and find a plane. Stop having all these different theories.
What are your thoughts on Al-Qaeda? Maybe?
I don't know how to say, because it is a very vague organization. Like anything can be linked to Al-Qaeda. Even separatist groups that has no link to Al-Qaeda can be linked to Al-Qaeda, because in a way, I think terrorist group, they function independently. They are not like country or other groups where it is interconnected closely in a way. So.
I actually read an article back then that Al-Qaeda, well, I don't know how true this is, and it's kind of very controversial news as well. It said that Al Qaeda was actually initiated by the U.S. government to, to do their dirty work for them.
These are all the conspiracy theories, I guess.
Exactly.
So the next news is reported by the Reuters. Is about Philippines to give U.S. forces access to up to 5 military bases.
Wow.
From 1 to 5.
Well, it seems that the Philippine military base will be made available to U.S. forces to rotate aircraft, ships, equipment, troops, Manila chief negotiator of the new security pact said on Friday, as Philippines looks to counter China's rising power in the region.
And that 10-year military agreement, which also covers storage of equipments for maritime security and humanitarian assistance, was signed with the United States last week.
So he also said that the Army's jungle training base in Fort Magsaysay, is that how you say it? I'm embarrassing myself. In the north of Manila was an ideal location for the United States because the two oldest allies in the region regularly hold joint exercises there. And the U.S. has also requested access to 3 former U.S. bases, Clark Airfield, Subic Bay, Poro Point, and even the Camp Aguinaldo, the military general headquarters in Manila.
It seems like by having that 10-year military agreement and increase up to 5 military bases, U.S. presence in Southeast Asia is going to be vast, I think.
Definitely. I think they're really making their way through in Asia, and they're strengthening their position in Manila. And they're also considering whether to seek access to 4 civil airports.
Interesting.
So they're definitely trying to... they probably have something up their sleeves. I don't know.
So China is a bigger threat, not just to us, Southeast Asia, also to the U.S., it seems so.
Right, and this also goes back to the territorial disputes that we discussed last week, that China is becoming increasingly assertive, actually, over the disputed waters. They've already seized the Scarborough Shoal in 2012, and now they're again giving problems to Philippines and their coast guards, and trying to expand their territory in the South China Sea.
Yeah. Talking about Philippines again, left rebels take 40 villages hostage in that particular southern area in the Philippines, spotted by Z News. So around 40 civilian hostages in the southern Philippines were being nabbed and taken hostage. What do you think of this? I mean, the southern Philippines has always been a very chaotic region when it comes to terrorist groups.
So I think this incident came just a day after Philippine police arrested a rebel leader who is believed to be behind the killing of government troops in Davao del Sur and the Cotabato provinces. And the alleged hostage-taking in Compostela Valley started around 10 a.m. On a Saturday as dozens of heavily armed New People's Army guerrillas gathered 39 villages, Xinhua reported.
Interesting. It seems like the southern Philippines have quite a strong lefty army there, because 4,000 strong New People's Army, which is the armed wing of the Communist Party of the Philippines, has been fighting a leftist insurgency in the 60 provinces since 1969. That's quite a long time.
It's true, and I hope the government gets in touch with these leftist rebels, work something out, negotiate with them, because I'm sure these 40 civilians, their family members will be worried about them, and it's going to be probably another big tragedy if they don't curb it soon.
But I think it's not so much of the 40 villages. It's a political struggle for this leftist
Definitely.
group. It's just for them to make a point.
Yeah, they definitely have political intentions, because it happened after the arrest of their rebel leader. But I don't know. I think it's very extreme for them to take in 40 people for that.
Yeah, that's true. So moving on to another region of another country of our neighbor, which is Thailand. So what's the news on Thailand?
So it seems that the Thailand opposition urges to delay elections. So if you remember last week, we reported that Thailand has finally settled on their election date, which is on the 20th of July, I think. And the opposition wants to push it even further now.
Wow. I wonder why is it?
Well, I don't know, but the leader of Thailand's opposition has called for the July elections to be pushed back to at least 6 months.
But the thing about Thailand is their politics has been so partisan that they have a huge political deadlock since the anti-government protests began in Bangkok in November 2013. So it seems like how can they push forward for democracy when either party is like blocking each other from from letting the public to exercise the voting system?
Yeah, when the last elections was gonna happen, the opposition members went and set up blockades all over the election centers and didn't let the candidates go in to register, didn't let people go and vote. And I think it's really giving their own people a hard time because it's not going anywhere. As you mentioned just now, they've been having this deadlock since November 2013. And it's like, May now, and they still haven't gotten things sorted out.
Just to rewind back, Miss Yingluck, which is the Prime Minister of the current government, announced that 20th July polls after a previous snap election in February was declared unconstitutional.
And the ruling party, Pheu Thai, had been expected to win the February vote. However, the opposition boycotted the polls and protesters disrupted the voting. And at the height of all these anti-government demonstrations, protesters also shut down key road junctions and blockaded government ministries. So
it shows that each party is blocking each other from getting, each other a winning, I would say, advantage.
And it seems that the opposition leader also has called for the Prime Minister, Ms. Yingluck, and her government to resign and to allow an interim cabinet to oversee a referendum on reforms.
Moving to Indonesia now, although Indonesia is having their own election as well.
That's right.
But today's news is about Australian Prime Minister drops Indonesia trips amid asylum boat reports.
Yeah, so it seems that Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott has abruptly cancelled a planned visit to Indonesia, sparking criticism from opposition politicians. He was due to meet Indonesia's president next week in a meeting to improve the ties between the two countries.
It seems like the relations between Indonesia and Australia has been actually quite strained, especially talking about the issues of asylum seekers from Indonesia riding on boats to Australia and also spying rows.
Yeah, Australia actually intercepted another boat of asylum seekers who are on their way to Australia. And Indonesia sees this as an embarrassment. And they also insist that sending back boatloads of asylum seekers violates Indonesia's sovereignty.
How is that so?
Yeah, should it be violating Australia's sovereignty? Because your people are actually going there. So why are you getting mad at Australia?
Yeah. I think their relationship has been strained for quite some time due to these issues on asylum seekers. But a lot of these people who, go all the way to Australia because there's a lot of discrimination, especially towards the minorities there. And also, it also goes back to the standard of living in Indonesia, very high inequality, and people seek for a better life, so they go to Australia.
But Australia also has a very good program for these asylum seekers in Papua New Guinea, where all these people on the boats are actually brought there, and they are kept there in how do I say it, hostile kind of environment.
I see.
Not hostile, sorry, like a boarding school kind of thing. But they're given food, they're given like gym time, entertainment, and they can stay there for as long as they like.
I see.
So when they finally decide to go home, they are free to go home. I think Australia is actually handling it really well, and Indonesia is probably overreacting here.
I don't know about that, but there were criticism on the way Australia handles these asylum seekers.
Right.
Talking about that boarding place.
Uh-huh.
I think it is situated in an island.
Yeah, it's in
somewhere.
Papua New Guinea.
Yeah, and there were criticism by some by some civil society groups in Australia, saying that there's a lot of violation happening, a human rights violation happening in that particular island itself. So the last one of today's news by New York Times is about Indonesia as well.
And it's a very interesting news.
Mm-hmm.
Embrace of atheism puts an Indonesian in prison.
Interesting, about atheism.
Yeah, so growing up in a conservative Muslim household in rural West Sumatra, Alexander An hid a dark secret beginning at the age of 9, which is he did not believe in God. He stopped praying in 2008 when he was only 26 and finally told his parents and 3 younger siblings that he was an atheist, which is a very rare revelation in a country like Indonesia, which is the world's most populous Muslim majority nation.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting about Indonesia is you can have any religion as long as you're part of the 6 recognized religion in Indonesia.
Right. Okay.
And not believing in God is something that is a culture shock in Indonesia. So for him, declaring himself, I don't believe in God, is something that is a culture shock within the religious Indonesian society.
So it seems that this guy ended up in prison in 2008 after a foul on the law restricting electronic communications. What happened is that he joined this atheist group started by a group of Indonesians, but they were living in Netherlands. And
he was living in Indonesia.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And then he started posting comments on why he did not think that God existed. And these Indonesians found out, reported him, and he ended up in jail for blasphemy.
And they even go all the way to his workplace. And at that time, he was working in a government agency. And they just stalk him and say that, why you're doing this?
Yeah,
and, really
they
terrify
forced him to admit that he does believe in God, that he cannot say there is no God, that is just not acceptable.
That's true. I mean, Indonesia's state ideology, Pancasila, enshrines monotheism, and blasphemy is illegal. However, the Constitution of Indonesia guarantees freedom of religion and speech, and the country is 16 years into a transition from an authoritarianism to democracy. So I guess in this sense, they are still trying to figure it out in terms of how much individual rights a person can have when it comes to freedom of religion or freedom from religion.
I think they still have a very long way to go. It has been 16 years, and they say the Constitution guarantees freedom of religion. But I guess when you're an atheist, it's not really a religion, so that makes you a marginalized community. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, you are right on that. In fact, a lot of minorities communities in Indonesia who has more animistic religion, which are not recognized officially by the Indonesian government, are also considered as blasphemy. I mean, in terms of the way they worship their religion. So it's still a long way in this sense.
What do you think about Malaysia? Are we open about atheism here?
I think we are even a longer way.
Really?
Unfortunately, because Islam, even though it is recognized as
the official
religion of this country, but in terms of the way people perceive it is a state religion, unfortunately. Right. So, I mean, for atheism among non-Muslim probably is easier compared to Muslims.
Do you know people who are atheists and they're out in the open?
I'm sure they are, but I don't think they are able to openly admit it.
Okay.
And in this case, I think it is similar to the case of Alexander An. It's either you keep it to yourself and be quiet about it.
That's sad, actually. I don't think that Richard Dawkins is gonna be happy about that. So let me just go through this final news, which is not really in ASEAN, but I think it's important to share with our listeners, which is about the abduction of the Nigerian schoolgirls. So it happened on April 15, where more than 200 students between the ages of 16 and 18 were actually kidnapped from Chibok Girls Secondary School, located in the conflict-stricken northeastern Borno state. And the schools have been closed since March because of all these terrorism fears. And the Islamic militant group Boko Haram has been blamed for the kidnappings, although they have not publicly claimed any responsibility or said anything.
And what is interesting is this adoption case has not been widely publicized as much as what we see on the MH370 case or the South Korean ferry sinking case. Seems like people just brush it off as just another
exactly.
issue.
And these people actually have to use social media and with all these hashtags like bring back our girls, bring back our daughters.
You have to
in order to.
You have to mention the word hashtag bring back our girls.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not used to that. Right, so hashtag bring back our daughters and hashtag. I gave up.
Yeah.
So that's their way to demand attention from their government, their own government, which is really sad. I think it's not about the rest of the world. It's about their country itself.
I mean, 200 students is a lot of young people that are being adopted, and young girls furthermore.
And the sad part is there are actually reports that have spread saying that these abducted girls could have been sold as child brides to countries like Chad and Cameroon.
So I guess child bride is a big issue, not just in Muslim countries, but also
definitely
in African countries as well.
I don't know. I mean, these reports are not confirmed, but I'm hoping they're not true. I'm hoping that these parents will get to see their girls again, because it's 200 of them. That's almost the same number as MH370, like you mentioned,
that's true.
but it's not getting enough attention, and they're all little girls at that.
Okay, so that's all for our news today. Thank you for listening to us.
Thank you, Arlene.
A nice talking to you, Gowri.
Okay, bye-bye.